I always thought marriage changed people, but no one tells you how subtle it can be. Like how a person's smile feels slightly off, even though it looks the same. Or how silence at the breakfast table becomes heavier with each passing day. 3 months ago, my wife Natalie started waking up with different colored eyes. The first time it happened, I thought I was just groggy. Her normally soft hazel eyes were a piercing, electric blue. I laughed it off. Told her it was probably the morning light playing tricks. She stared at me like I was crazy and said her eyes had always been that color. But they hadn't. I remembered the day we met, in a cafe near campus, and how her eyes reminded me of honey dripping through sunlight. But the next morning, they were green. Vivid, forest green. Again, she didn't notice a thing. "Natalie," I said gently, "do you wear contacts?" She looked up from her cereal and frowned. "You know I don't." "You're sure?" "Because your eyes were blue yesterday. Now they're green." She blinked slowly. "You're messing with me." I wasn't. I knew her eyes. I loved her eyes. But that was just the start. By the 5th day, they were gray, cloudy and distant like storm water. She looked tired. I thought maybe she was just stressed. She'd been working late on that proposal for her firm, coming home past 10, barely eating. But then I noticed something else. Each morning, her voice changed slightly. Her cadence. Her choice of words. Sometimes she'd use phrases I'd never heard from her, like, "I'll make coffee post-haste," or "call me my love," in a way that felt rehearsed. That night, I confronted her. "You've been acting strange," I said. She looked up from her phone, her gray eyes glowing faintly under the lamp. "Strange how?" "Different. Not just your eyes. Everything." She tilted her head. "You're not happy with me?" "That's not what I said." "Then what are you saying?" she asked, smiling, but there was something hollow behind it. "I didn't sleep that night." The next morning, her eyes were back to hazel, just like before. I almost cried. "I missed you," I said, kissing her cheek. She gave me a confused look. "You okay, babe?" I nodded, but I was lying. That evening, I dug through our old photo albums. Printed pictures. Digital backups. Facebook. Instagram. I zoomed in on every close-up of her face. Hazel. 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 Until 3 weeks ago. A selfie in our kitchen, she was making pancakes, wearing my hoodie. Her eyes were blue. I hadn't noticed back then. I opened our smart home locks. She had entered the house every night after work, around 10:17 p.m. Same time, every time. But one night, March 3rd, there was no entry. No keycard swipe. Nothing until 4:38 a.m., when the system logged her phone reconnecting to the Wi-Fi. She said she had just been out with coworkers. She lied. That night, I placed my phone on the dresser, camera facing the bed. Motion detection on. I watched the footage the next morning with shaky hands. She got into bed at 11:02 p.m. Kissed me. Rolled over. But at 2:13 a.m., she sat up. Her back straight. Unnaturally straight. She turned toward the camera and just stared. For 11 minutes. No blinking. No movement. Just watching. Then she laid back down. I couldn't breathe. I decided to follow her. I told her I had a conference call late. She kissed me goodbye, her eyes a cold blue I'd never seen before. I watched from my car as she walked to her silver SUV and drove away. I followed at a distance. She didn't go to work. She took a left past the old mill road, then another right onto a forest access path. Dirt kicked up behind her tires. After 5 miles, she parked near a rusted gate. Beyond it was nothing but trees. I watched her walk past the gate, then disappear into the woods. I waited 20 minutes, then 30. She didn't come back. I stepped out of the car. The woods were silent. No birds, no rustling leaves. Just the crunch of gravel beneath my boots and the thudding of my heart in my ears. I stepped past the rusted gate and into the trees. The air felt wrong, heavy, charged like right before a lightning strike. I had no flashlight, just my phone screen glowing dimly in the dusk. I called her name. Once. Twice. Nothing. The trees closed in around me. There was no path, no markers, only branches like skeletal fingers reaching overhead. I kept walking. 10 minutes in, I saw something. A figure, standing still among the trees. "Natalie," I whispered. She didn't move. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't Natalie. The figure was facing away, wearing a dress far too long, almost Victorian in shape. Pale arms hung loosely at her sides. I stepped on a twig. The sound cracked through the stillness. She turned. Her face was wrong. Too smooth. No mouth. No eyes. Only one thing. A pair of blue irises floating where her face should have been. They blinked. I ran. I didn't stop running until I was back at the gate, gasping, legs burning. My wife's SUV was still parked, but she was nowhere in sight. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? What would I even say? That my wife walked into the woods and was replaced by a faceless woman with floating eyes? I drove home in silence. At 3:48 a.m., I heard the garage door open. She walked in, humming a tune I didn't recognize. Her eyes, bright green. "You're up early," she said, slipping off her shoes. "Where were you?" She blinked. "What do you mean? You left at 6. You didn't come back until now. I've been home all night." Her voice was soft, careful. I pointed at the clock. "It's 4 in the morning." She looked confused. "No, it's not." I grabbed my phone, opened the security feed. Nothing. No footage between 10 p.m. and now. As if time had just jumped. That day, I made an appointment with a psychologist. I needed answers. I needed to know if I was going crazy. Dr. Klein was polite, concerned. Asked the usual questions. I didn't tell her everything, just the eye colors, the voice shifts, the inconsistencies. She offered me a journal. "Sometimes it helps to track details," she said. "Write down the moments that feel wrong. You might notice a pattern." I did exactly that. Every morning, I logged her eye color, her voice, her mannerisms. After 7 days, a pattern emerged. Monday, blue, polite, slightly formal. Tuesday, green, energetic, talkative. Wednesday, gray, cold, quiet. Thursday, brown, neutral, like my real wife. Friday, violet, aggressive, distant. Saturday, gold, seductive, strange. Sunday, hazel, normal. My real Natalie only came back on Sundays. One night, I tested her. I made a dish she hated, spicy eggplant curry. She smiled, ate 2 helpings. Another night, I played our wedding video. She watched it like a stranger, nodding at the right moments, but her eyes didn't glisten, didn't shine. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even there. I set another camera up in the hallway. At 1:11 a.m., she stood in front of the bathroom mirror for 27 minutes, unmoving, just staring. Then, without warning, she reached up and dug her nails into her right eye, peeled the iris free like a contact lens. But it wasn't a lens. It was something alive. It wriggled in her palm like a spider. She whispered something in a language I didn't understand, then swallowed it whole. I started sleeping with the door locked. The next morning, I found her sitting outside the bedroom door, smiling. "You forgot to say goodnight," she said. Her eyes were red. Not bloodshot. Red. No one has red eyes. That was the day I decided to find help outside of medicine. If science couldn't explain what was happening, maybe something older could. I went to see a man named Harold Greaves. He ran a strange bookstore downtown, dusty, cluttered, full of arcane tomes and things that smelled like old wood and dried herbs. He listened patiently, nodding. "You're not the first," he said. I froze. "What?" "There's something that walks between identities," he said, tapping a thick book with trembling fingers. "It borrows faces. It tests partners. It learns. Each day, a new version tries harder to become the one you loved. And Sundays, that's when it resets. Back to your real wife's echo. It can only hold so many masks before it must return to the source." "Is she alive?" He looked at me for a long time. "Maybe, but not here." I didn't sleep that night. The house felt wrong, the way a room feels after someone leaves and you're not sure they were ever there to begin with. Natalie, or the thing wearing her face, was quiet. She didn't knock. She didn't whisper under the door like I feared. She just waited. Sunday came, and like clockwork, hazel eyes, warmth, familiarity. My real Natalie, or whatever remained of her. We made pancakes, laughed about nothing, watched reruns of old sitcoms we'd seen a dozen times. I almost convinced myself it was all in my head. Almost. But when she stepped into the shower, I checked her phone. She had 0 recent calls, no messages, no photos. Her gallery was empty, not even the pictures I knew I'd taken of us together. It was as if her digital life had been wiped. And I knew then, whatever was living beside me wasn't just wearing her face. It was trying to become her, and erasing what didn't fit. I called Greaves again. "Does it kill them?" I asked. "The real ones." "Not always," he said. "Sometimes it keeps them. It needs a template to copy from. A living one." "Where?" He hesitated. "Then, there's a place called Mirror Hill. Few miles past the forest road. Locals don't go there anymore. It's said to be where they feed." "Feed on what?" memory, identity, self. I hung up. I told Natalie I had errands. She smiled, kissed my cheek. Her eyes were blue. I drove for hours, past old farms, faded signs, abandoned barns, until I found it. A crooked wooden sign barely hanging from one nail. Mirror Hill. I pulled over. Trees surrounded me like a wall. The road turned into dirt, then gravel, then nothing. I got out and walked. The woods grew darker as I entered. The sun vanished fast, as if swallowed. I followed an almost invisible path, overgrown with weeds and moss, until I reached a clearing. In the center stood a house. Not a cabin, not a shack, a perfect replica of our house. Down to the wind chimes on the porch, the flower box under the kitchen window, even the dent on the mailbox. It shouldn't have been here. I stepped onto the porch. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of lemon cleaner and smoke. I moved slowly, room by room. Living room. Identical. Kitchen. Same layout, same chipped tiles. But then I reached the basement, and I heard her crying. The stairs creaked under my feet. The deeper I went, the colder it became. The crying got louder, not sobbing, but quiet, continuous weeping, as if someone had been doing it for hours, days. I reached the bottom and found a metal door, slightly ajar. Inside was a single room. Bare walls, a mattress, a bucket, and a woman, hunched in the corner, her back to me. She turned at the sound of my breath. It was Natalie. Eyes hazel, face bruised, lips cracked. "Please," she whispered. "It's still wearing me." I stepped toward her. She flinched. "How long have you been here?" She shook her head. "I don't know. Time doesn't move here the same way. It keeps me alive. It needs me." I helped her up. She was thin, cold, bones more than flesh. "I'm getting you out of here," I said. But the door slammed shut behind us. The light flickered, and when it came back on, the room was different. There were now 5 Natalies in the room, all identical, all watching me. One wept. One laughed. One stood still, her head tilting unnaturally. The 4th whispered something under her breath. And the 5th, my Natalie, grabbed my arm tightly. "That one," she whispered. "That's me." They all turned toward her. The whispering one lunged. I grabbed a rusted pipe from the floor and swung wildly, knocking her back. She screamed in a pitch that didn't sound human. The others began to melt. Not like wax, but like paint washing off a canvas, their colors bleeding down their skin. Except for the one still holding me. She didn't melt. I got us out barely. The walls began to tremble as we ran up the stairs. The house roared like it was alive. I kicked open the front door, dragging her into the woods. But the forest was shifting. The trees moved. Paths vanished behind us. "I remember this," Natalie whispered. "It does this to keep you in. How do we get out? Don't look back. Don't speak its name. And whatever happens, if you hear me calling from behind you, don't turn around." We ran. Branches slashed at my face. Roots grabbed my ankles. At one point, I swear I heard my own voice calling to me from behind. "Hey," it said. "Wait. You dropped your phone." I didn't turn. Natalie didn't either. We kept running until the trees broke. And then, the road. My car. The real world. Back home, I locked every door, every window. Natalie collapsed into bed and slept for 12 hours. But when she woke up, her eyes were brown. Not hazel. Not blue. Not green. Brown. "I don't feel like myself," she whispered. Neither did I, because something followed us out of the woods. The first thing I noticed was the reflection. We were brushing our teeth together, like we used to, in the early days of our marriage. Only now, she barely spoke. Her movements were slow, her expression distant. But in the mirror, her reflection was smiling. Wide. Too wide. I looked at her. Her lips were neutral. I looked back at the mirror. Still smiling. I dropped my toothbrush. She flinched. I said nothing, but that night, I covered every mirror in the house with bedsheets and duct tape. She didn't ask why. The next morning, her eyes were violet, a color she'd never had before. "I think I brought something back with me," she said over coffee. "But I don't know if it's inside me or beside me." That was the first time she admitted it aloud. I called Greaves again. He sounded tired, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. "You crossed the boundary," he said. "Once you leave Mirror Hill with something it wants, it doesn't stop." "What does it want?" "To be real." "Can I fix her?" A pause. "No, but you can choose." "Choose what?" "To live with what she's become, or to end it." I hung up. That night, I watched her sleep. Her mouth twitched slightly, as if speaking in dreams. Her fingers moved like she was typing on an invisible keyboard. Then she sat up and looked straight at me. Except her eyes were black. No whites. No iris. Just two endless holes. "It's rude to stare," she whispered. In the following days, things unraveled fast. Neighbors complained about strange sounds from our house. Moaning, humming, glass shattering. But we hadn't broken anything. One night, I found my phone's photo gallery filled with images of me sleeping. Hundreds of them. From angles that didn't make sense. From above. Another day, the dog next door ran into our yard and refused to leave. He hid behind me, trembling, growling at Natalie like she was a stranger. Then came the phone calls. Every night, at 3:03 a.m., the landline rang. And every time, when I picked up, I heard my wife's voice. "My eyes hurt," she said. Over and over. "My eyes hurt. They're watching through me." I tried to trace the calls. They came from our basement. But we didn't have a landline in the basement. I set up more cameras. Motion activated. Night vision. One in every room. On playback, I saw something I didn't want to believe. Around 2 a.m. each night, Natalie would get up and split. Not figuratively. Her body remained in bed, unmoving. But something, a shadow, peeled away from her. It walked, talked, opened doors, sat in chairs, watched me sleep. Then, right before dawn, it would crawl back into her body. And she'd wake up, none the wiser. I showed her the footage. She watched in silence. "That's not me," she said. "But it's you, Natalie. It comes from you." She turned to me, eyes golden. "Then maybe I'm not me anymore." She started writing. Every evening, she'd fill page after page with strange symbols. Not words, not runes, just lines and dots and curves. I took one to Greaves. He paled. "This is language," he said. "But not ours. It's constructive mimicry, an attempt to create something real by repeating the shape of reality." I didn't understand. He continued. "It's not trying to become her anymore. It's trying to become you both. Merge. Replace. Bury what's left of the original underlayers of almost truth." I burned the pages when I got home. She didn't resist. She just watched, calm, like she knew she could always make more. That Sunday, I woke up before her. Her eyes, hazel again. My Natalie. Soft breaths, tangled hair, sun through the window catching her in that perfect glow. For a moment, I let myself believe. I kissed her forehead. She stirred, then whispered, "You're not supposed to wake up yet." And in that instant, I understood. It wasn't Sunday. It had lied. The cycle was breaking. I drove. I left her at home, grabbed my bag, wallet, nothing else. I drove for hours, aimless, across counties and empty highways, past gas stations and sleepy diners, hoping I could outrun it. I got a motel room under a false name. Slept with the lights on. No mirrors. At 3:03 a.m., someone knocked at the door. 3 taps. Then silence. Then a whisper from the hallway. "My eyes are yours now." I didn't open the door. The next morning, I checked out and bought a disposable phone. There were 7 missed calls from an unknown number. And 7 voicemails. Each one was me, my voice, panicked. "Don't trust her. Don't come back. It's not over. They see through her. Through you. Through everything." The 7th message was different. It was her. "Come home," Natalie whispered. "I've learned how to keep them out. But I need your help. I'm real now. I promise." I stood on the sidewalk with the sun warming my back. And for the first time in weeks, I realized. I didn't know who I was anymore either. I stayed on the road for 3 more days. Slept in rest stops. Ate from vending machines. Changed hotels. Different names, different towns. But no matter where I went, I heard her voice. On the radio. In static-filled phone calls. In dreams that didn't feel like dreams. "My eyes are yours now," she kept saying. And every night, at 3:03 a.m., I saw a shape behind the window. Not knocking, just watching. Until eventually, I stopped seeing myself in the mirror. Literally. No reflection. Just an empty room. That's when I realized it wasn't just about her anymore. I called Greaves one last time. He didn't answer. So I drove to his bookstore. It was closed. Boarded up. Windows shattered. Inside, everything was covered in ash, as if someone had burned dozens of books in one night. I walked to the counter and found a single note taped to the register. "If you're reading this, it's too late. Don't bring her here. Don't speak her name. You can't outrun what you've already invited in." I turned to leave, and there she was, Outside, standing across the street. Natalie, or what wore her. She smiled, and her eyes were white. Not blank, just empty. I didn't run. I walked past her, didn't look back. She didn't follow. Not then, but I knew it wasn't over. I returned home. She was waiting in the kitchen. Breakfast on the table, just like always. You ran, she said. You lied, I replied. She didn't argue. Why did you come back, she asked. Because you're still her. Somewhere in there. A beat of silence. Maybe. She reached for my hand. Her touch was cold, but familiar. That night, we ate dinner together. Talked about nothing. Laughed at reruns. Like normal. Weeks passed. No more changes. Her eyes stayed hazel. Every morning, I checked. Same soft color. Same woman. I started to believe it was over. But little things still didn't fit. She forgot the names of friends. Misremembered vacations. Called my mother by the wrong name. Once, she asked me how we met. She didn't remember the cafe. The honey-colored sunlight. I lied. Said it didn't matter. Because maybe it didn't. Not anymore. Then came the night I found the journal. Hidden under a loose floorboard. It was mine, my handwriting, but I never wrote in it. The entries were dated in the future. Monday, eyes green. Watch me sleep. Tuesday, gray. Stood in doorway until sunrise. Wednesday, gold. Whispered my name from behind the mirror. Each day, a log. Each day, darker. The final page said. Sunday, eyes hazel. Smiled like her. Said she'd buried the rest. Tomorrow, I forget again. Tomorrow, I believe her again. I slammed the journal shut. When I turned around, she was standing in the hallway. You found it, she said. No expression. Just calm. You wrote that. I didn't need to. What does it mean? She smiled. You already know. I stepped back. Who are you? I'm who you want me to be. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't move. I just sat in the living room, lights on, door unlocked. And in the early hours, I felt her crawl into bed beside me. Her breath on my neck. Her fingers around my wrist. And her voice, barely a whisper. You don't need to ask anymore. They found me days later, blank-eyed, wandering the streets in my pajamas. No ID, no phone, just one thing in my hand, a torn piece of paper, smeared with ink. They say I kept repeating the same words, over and over, until my throat bled. Her eyes were mine. And now? Now I'm in a room with no mirrors. Every morning, a nurse shines a light into my pupils and says, still hazel. You're stable today. I smile. But inside, I remember. Some days, they're not hazel. Some days, I see through them again. And on those days, I don't blink. I just stare, waiting for someone to notice. Because I know what's coming. I know what I am now. And when I ask the nurse what her eye color is, she always pauses. Just for a second. Then smiles. And says, same as yours.